Hey, special educators. Welcome to Teach, Taskbox, Inspire, the podcast dedicated to making your job as a special education teacher easier by making your instruction more fun for you and your students. Inside each episode, you'll learn how to get the most use out of your task boxes in the classroom. I'm your host, Lisa Holliday from Chalkboard Superhero, a veteran special education teacher passionate about empowering you with purposeful teaching strategies, helpful tips and tricks, and other classroom management tools that will help you thrive in your role. Let's get started with today's episode. Hey there, special education teachers, and welcome back to another episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I'm your host, Lisa Holliday, and today we're talking about something every educator faces at some point in their career: escape behaviors. Specifically, we'll be discussing some effective interventions to help reduce and manage these behaviors in the classroom. So let's get started. Before we jump into interventions, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what an escape behavior actually is. Escape behaviors happen when a student engages in certain actions to avoid or quote-unquote escape a task or directive. This could look like leaving the classroom or shutting down or even getting into a meltdown because they want to avoid a certain activity. And as always, make sure you're taking ABC data before jumping into any behavioral plan. This will help you confirm that what you're seeing really is escape motivated and not another function like attention seeking or sensory seeking. Gathering this data really helps us to be strategic and effective. So, what is escape behavior? How do we differentiate escape behavior from others? So, let's talk about it like this. Escape behaviors are really just actions taken to avoid any undesirable task or situation. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes escape behaviors can look a lot like attention-seeking behaviors. The key is to pay attention to what happens right before and right after the behavior. That's your antecedent and consequence. These are what are going to tell whether a student is trying to avoid a task or if they're trying to gain attention. So let's dive into 5 different interventions. Number 1, teach students how to request a break. The first intervention is absolutely the most effective one. So many people don't realize that this is the first thing that you need to do. Teaching students how to appropriately ask for a break is the key. There are so many times escape behaviors happen because students need a break, but they don't know how to ask for one. I had a student at the high school level who absolutely learned at the middle school level to destroy an entire classroom to get out of doing what she wanted to do. And it took an entire year of teaching her how to ask for a break before she realized, oh, I don't need to upend the room. I don't need to flip a desk. I don't need to throw a chair to ask for a break. I can use my little card. So anyways, it's often easier for them to elope from the classroom or act out than it is to verbally request that time, that break. So here's kind of where you come in. You got to start by teaching your students how to request or ask for a break. You can do this verbally or non-verbally with a break card. Now, I love using break cards because they give students a non-verbal way to ask for a break, especially for those kids who struggle with communication or who might even be really overwhelmed in that moment. The trick is to make sure that when the students ask for a break using that card, they get to access a preferred reinforcer. So maybe you give them 5 minutes of a preferred activity, or maybe they just want a calm down space. They want to go over to the break space. Over time, as the break itself becomes reinforcing, you can gradually fade out that extra reinforcer. Number 2, use a visual schedule. Intervention number 2 is all about those visual schedules. I think many of you are already using those in your classroom, but did you know that they're a great way to reduce those escape behaviors? And I know some of you are like, how do I use that? So with a visual schedule, students know exactly what to expect and when. Once you take that ABC data and figure out when the escape behaviors are happening, you can kind of work in breaks or reinforcements around those tricky times. By showing students on their visual schedule that a break or reinforcer is coming, say, okay, 5 more math problems, and you have that break, you can help reduce their anxiety and the likelihood of those elopement behaviors. So you're essentially teaching them that a break is coming if they stick with the task, and that predictability goes a long, long way. All right, number 3 is build student choice into activities. I feel like I say this every single podcast about student choice, but really this is something that will help you and help the students. So you probably noticed that most students have a favorite subject and a least favorite subject, right? It's no surprise that we tend to see more of those elopement behaviors during that dreaded subject, whether it's math or writing or ELA. Here's a great way I want you to try to tackle that. Offer limited choices. For example, say, all right, we needed to do both math and reading today. What would you like to do first? This gives students a sense of control over their schedule while ensuring they complete all the tasks. However, maybe you don't have that ability to give them that much flexibility. There's still so many different choices that you can offer. All right, do you want to start at the front of the packet or the back of the packet? Do you want to work with a pencil or a pen today? I mean, the list goes on, but offering those choices really helps. Additionally, you can add special interests into any activity that they're doing. If you have a student that loves Mario but hates writing, why not put Mario characters on their writing paper? For the student who's fascinated by elevators, make their math word problems about elevators. So really personalizing tasks like this helps students engage and reduce that desire to escape or to get away from that activity. All right, number 4, timers and priming for transitions. So many escape behaviors happen because students get overwhelmed when it's time to switch tasks. Using a visual timer can really help them see how much time is left before a break or a new activity is coming. And priming students for transitions by letting them know what's coming next can also alleviate a lot of that anxiety. So statements like, all right, in 5 minutes, we're going to be switching to reading, or you can give students a heads up by saying, oh, just 2 more minutes, or maybe you have your phone timer out and you just put a 2-minute timer up so they can see that they only have 2 minutes. This also helps to reduce that urge to escape. All right, number 5 is differential reinforcement. So this strategy involves reinforcing behaviors that are more appropriate or preferred over escape behaviors. For example, instead of running out of the room, reinforce a student for raising their hand and asking for a break. By doing this, you're teaching them that there are better ways to handle their desire to escape while still addressing their needs. So, as always, you want to keep in mind that reinforcement has to be immediate, absolutely immediate, and meaningful for it to work. Make sure the reinforcer is something that the student really values. If you have something that they don't care about, it's not going to work. That is not a reinforcer. And you can go back to my other episodes about proper reinforcers if you're struggling, because if the reinforcer isn't working and you're like, well, Johnny really loved Legos yesterday, you kind of have to really understand your student and kind of have a hierarchy of reinforcers because you know what will work for each student. And it's going to be different. Make sure you have maybe little cars or something so that you know what reinforcers work for which students. So I know that's a short one today. I will go through them really quick. Number 1 was that teaching students how to request a break using a card. Number 2, using a visual schedule to kind of make sure that they know a break is already coming. Building in that student choice, using timer and priming for those transitions, and offering that reinforcement when it's needed. Those are 5 effective interventions for managing those escape behaviors. Remember, these are just a few of the strategies you can use, and really every student is unique. So feel free to tweak them to fit your classroom needs. And I'd love to hear what's working for you in your classroom. Have you found a different intervention that's been successful? Please let me know in the comments or find me on social media. So that's all I have for you today, guys. I really hope this was helpful. Until next time, bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I hope you've gained some tips and motivation to fuel your week ahead. If you're ready to explore more strategies for empowering your students as independent learners, be sure to dive into my free training at chalkboardsuperhero.com/training. And don't keep all this knowledge to yourself. Share this episode with your special education teacher friends who could use some motivation and inspiration. One more thing before you go. If you're finding this podcast helpful and want to show support, head to Apple Podcasts and leave your rating and review. Until next time, keep teaching, taskboxing, and inspiring.